Description: Hyuga Hinata is a small, shy Haim, despised by the entire clan for her weakness. Oh no! The new Hinata will show everyone where the crayfish hang out.
Sorry about the static. I've been working on something dark. If you like my stories here, but want something scary, check out my new horror channel, Felon Tapes. I'm posting found footage and scary stories there. Link in the description. Now, back to Naruto.
Chapter 6. Secrets. Mizuki-sensei had a way of talking, at length, and with flair, and he also had a way of making the things he was talking about literally appear before your eyes. He talked about the chakra system, and I couldn't help but imagine a man with his 361 tenketsu. He talked about chakra, and I pictured a bluish liquid vapor, clearly visible with the Byakugan. I don't know what others imagined at such moments. Not everyone had the Byakugan, after all, but I liked Mizuki much more than Irika. If only because Mizuki was clearly more talented as a teacher than Yumino. Although the impression is still mixed, because sometimes his gaze made me shudder. Strange. Not like sensei's usual behavior. I don't know what it's connected to, and I don't even want to know. One could assume that this is precisely why such a seemingly good academy teacher suddenly turns into a bad deserter who betrayed his home village. But who knows what's really going on there? To get involved in such a mess, no, I have enough problems of my own. There will be. Because there are a measly 6 months left until graduation, and Irika-sensei has been sick for a month already. Why am I adding Irika to my problems? Well, Naruto complained that the sensei, who had previously quietly hated Uzumaki, had suddenly fallen in love with him and was trying to offer him ramen. Naruto told me this a long time ago, but I hadn't even thought about it, and when I did, Irika was already gone. Still, I could answer that emotionally, nothing had changed because of my teacher. And why would anyone feign emotion, especially if they're a shinobi? The only word that came to mind was a sharp order. Biting my lip, I glanced at the first desk where Sakura sat. Today was another day of testing fights, and she'd probably ask to be paired with me again. I wonder when it'll dawn on her that Leaf Taijutsu can't defeat me. I've even caught up with Sasuke already, defeating him in 4 out of 10 fights and drawing the other 3. Moreover, Sakura clearly isn't cut out for close combat, she's being careful. While the Forest of Death should change that, I'm reluctant to send the Academy's reference book along with the boys on missions. It's useful in theory, sure, but in practice, it's of little use, and if it's of little use, then it's dead weight. I glanced at Sensei, who'd been eyeing my sleeping neighbor suspiciously for a while now, and nudged Naruto awake. I couldn't fathom why he'd suddenly feel the urge to go to sleep, but at the Academy, that's punishable. A chalk blow to the forehead. And the teachers are merciless, and don't spare their students. Does everyone agree that we're brainless, and therefore have nothing to gain? I didn't nudge Shikamaru, who'd suddenly sat down next to us. There were 3 desks, and Mizuki didn't want to waste his chalk on him either. It was clear that Nara would just rub his sore spot and go back to sleep. That's just the kind of guy he is. Naruto blinked sleepily, caught my eye, and stared blankly at the board. Mizuki stopped looking sideways, so I shifted my hand slightly to make it easier for Naruto to copy the notes. Otherwise, waiting for him to return the notebook, oh well. It's easier to use the time productively now. Naruto can't listen in this state anyway. Naruto, what's wrong with you? I asked, confused, as he nearly slept through the rest of the lesson. This had definitely never happened before, so, rather worried, I dragged my friend over to Ino and Sasuke. It's not that I was so scared that I dragged him over to our smart guys, it's just that calligraphy is a boring subject, and the teacher, incidentally, the only class, besides the language of flowers, that isn't taught by the regular sensei, is practically deaf, so I could sit somewhere far away from him and have a great whisper. I didn't sleep today, Databeo, he admitted, and then yawned so hard that I suddenly felt the urge to yawn too, but I held it in. Ino yawned though, and Sasuke quickly turned away to avoid catching the same infection, but he still yawned at the same time. The 3 of us looked reproachfully at Naruto, but he seemed oblivious. and then the meaning of the words dawned on me. Why weren't you asleep? I frowned, feigning sternness with all my might, but Naruto merely waved his hand. I narrowed my eyes but didn't ask anything, and Uzumaki, contrary to his usual habit, didn't answer ahead of time. Some secrets? Having quietly sat through the rest of the lectures, interrupted by short whispers with Ino and terse replies from Sasuke, I made sure to nudge Naruto awake whenever the teacher looked at us. He should at least feign activity if he couldn't do anything, or something. It's rather amusing, though. My condition would be much worse if I hadn't slept all night, yet Naruto even manages to occasionally engage in conversation and mutter something. I thoughtfully wrote a character on the paper, at least simulating some kind of action. But why does Naruto want to sleep? And most importantly, why is he silent? At the training ground where we were supposed to begin practicing sealing, Fuin no Jutsu, today, I listened with interest to Mizuki, glanced at Naruto with interest, and stared at my own scroll with interest. Judging by my knowledge, Naruto should be one of the first to succeed, judging by the sensei's rantings, who said that chakra control was necessary for sealing. Uzumaki should have failed the task altogether. For some reason, I wanted to trust my own knowledge more than this incomprehensible teacher. I placed the given stone on the unrolled scroll we'd also been given and sighed. This is an E-rank technique. It's easy. With my chakra control, I should be able to handle it. Narrowing my eyes, I placed one hand on the paper. Mizuki-sensei had advised first making physical contact with the object being sealed, and rattled off, activating the technique, Fuin no Jutsu. To my disappointment, absolutely nothing happened. The second time, too. And the third. Thinking that maybe Naruto would do better, I turned to him and rolled my eyes, though no one noticed due to the lack of a pupil. And Naruto was asleep. Of course. I shook him awake, somewhat vindicatively, and quickly explained what needed to be done. Uzumaki, looking much more cheerful now, nodded vigorously and slapped his hand on the scroll. Fuin no Jutsu! He shouted, and the stone disappeared into white smoke. The pattern of seals on the scroll changed subtly, but before I could get interested, Naruto leaned over it. He poked it with interest, even seemed to sniff it, and then said, Wow! It really is sealed. How did you know it was sealed and not just vanished or something? I asked suspiciously. Naruto blinked, then looked from me to the scroll and back again. I was inwardly delighted. Ranky isn't that much, but it was a first try. I envy Naruto with a passion. Well, Databeo. Naruto scratched the back of his head. It's just that here. He poked his finger at a place on the seal that meant nothing to me. And here. He poked again. The mark became like this. He pointed to some squiggle and finished cheerfully. So it's definitely sealed. I nodded, pretended to understand, and massaged the bridge of my nose. Excellent. Mizuki was being completely unnecessary and wrong. The Uzumaki genes were everything, and they couldn't care less about their host's chakra control. Naruto's was absolutely lousy, and yet he still managed to perform the technique on his first try. I casually migrated to my scroll and continued tinkering with it. Toward the end of the lesson, a pebble wisp of white smoke billowed around it, but it vanished immediately, leaving it unchanged. I glanced sideways at Naruto, who, out of boredom, was now sealing and unsealing not just the pebble but also nearby leaves and twigs, and sighed. But he doesn't have eyes. Just as Naruto and I were heading to our clearing where we planned to meet Niji, Ino pounced on me from behind. I barely managed to stay on my feet, but obediently endured the hug. Yamanaka's footsteps were audible, as she made no secret of the fact that she was running toward me, so her appearance didn't come as a surprise. Naruto, you're amazing! Ino breathed admiringly, settling down next to me. Sasuke, who had appeared at her side, only nodded in confirmation. Everyone looked up to you as a hero, no one else could do it. Some people are smoking, Sasuke added in a bored tone, interrupting Yamanaka's enthusiasm. Ino and I looked up at the sky at the same time. Sasuke-kun likes specifics and doesn't like making mistakes, and he also can't stand the mistakes of others. Honestly, sometimes he's simply unbearable, but he's one of us, and that makes him a little more relatable. But I will still never understand Ino. Naruto blushed, muttered something, and stared at his feet. I kicked a pebble thoughtfully. It's typical for Naruto to be embarrassed by such warmth, but it's understandable. They didn't love a child enough, and this is the result. He's ready to move mountains for any person he even remotely knows who has done anything for him. He urgently needs to praise him more often, love him, and show him attention, and give Niji a kick too. And Ino, but Sasuke shouldn't. He knows how to keep his mouth shut and even acknowledges Naruto's virtues. But he has mixed feelings about him, and about all of us too, so what's the big deal? And you, as always, are very precise, Sasuke-kun, I sang. The Uchiha flinched at the hated suffix and only glared at me with hostility. I chuckled and twitched the corner of my lips. I say what I want. Only idiots, or shinobi, would force themselves into the grip of restraint when it's absolutely not necessary. Come on, Sasuke, don't be offended, I remarked normally as we entered the park. My bag slapped my hip as usual, and a familiar peace spread through my soul. It's just that Naruto found his calling, and here you are, all important and proper. Ino and I burst into laughter, and Naruto looked away again. Uchiha shrugged and didn't react, but I noticed the glance Naruto gave. So he understood everything and is now pondering my words, wondering what this calling was. As soon as we reached the clearing, I, following tradition, collapsed on the grass and rolled over to Naruto. Ino immediately gave Niji a brief and to-the-point update on the events of our lessons, and I heard my cousin chuckle. In expressiveness, it could easily rival Sasuke's, but in frequency, it certainly wouldn't. Niji is much more talkative than the Uchiha, but that's for now. It's imperative to make darlings out of both of them. It's not surprising, really, my brother said absent-mindedly. I propped myself up on my elbows, Sasuke turned his head slightly, Ino raised her eyebrows, and Naruto leaned forward with interest. The Uzumaki clan are specialists in Fuinjutsu, Niji explained, puzzled, seeing our increasingly long faces. Sasuke, as always, was Mr. Unflappable, and I, well, that wasn't hard. You don't know? But they were allies of Konoha, they were. Even the Chunin's vest has their insignia on it. Ah, really? Naruto's eyes widened and he slowly began to crawl towards my brother. He began to crawl away just as slowly. Why don't you go to the library, Naruto? He inquired, his whole demeanor making it clear he had no more to say. Uzumaki froze in disappointment and returned to me, while I tried not to show my delight. He didn't just stay where he was, he actually came back to me. Hurrah, the cat deep inside me is incredibly pleased. After sitting like that, chatting occasionally, for another half hour, we parted ways. The impetus was Niji's pointed glance at the sun. Then he looked at me, and I realized with regret that someone from the clan, most likely Hayashi, needed to see me. Niji's gratitude for letting me be here with my friends knew no bounds. He's not exactly fond of Ino and Sasuke, after all. On the other hand, he's quite fond of Naruto, and I hope he is of me, too, so it's complicated. I rose from my seat, said goodbye to the boys, nodded at Naruto, who had already taken off from a low start, and caught up with Niji. A few snide remarks about Ino and Sasuke were still on the tip of my tongue, but I tried my best to contain them, not intending to say them to Yamanaka and Uchiha's faces, nor to gossip with my cousin. Although a chuckle would occasionally break through, Niji ignored it. He'd probably gotten used to it. Don't you know what it is this time? I asked as we approached the house. My brother made such a face that I understood everything without words and barely managed not to laugh, silently exhaling. If only others knew Niji had such a talent for facial expressions, no one would have even thought of turning him into a cold, masked Hyuga. Although, I'm afraid shinobi don't really care about talent. It's clear that nothing is clear. I finally exhaled. After carrying my bag into my room and changing into my yukata, I fixed my hair and went to look for my father. Halfway to the door, I remembered I was a Hyuga and activated my Byakugan. My search was successful, and walking slowly and occasionally activating my dojutsu to clarify my route, I headed in the direction Hayashi had been following. Well, no. I remembered the pleasant conversation we had the day before the clan meeting in minute detail, but the route to that room was only now emerging. And it followed my own path exactly. I stopped about 2 meters from the door and pressed my ear to the wall. The voices were muffled, but I could still hear them, and I had the thin walls of the house to thank for that. I love Japan. I love the warm climate. Sim-san, there's no need to strain yourself. I assure you, there's no hidden meaning or agenda to this. Hayashi's measured, indifferent voice made me press myself further against the wall. If I'm not mistaken, Sim is the head of the Inuzuka clan. So what's she doing here? The Inuzuka clan has always had a good relationship with our clan. We're both censors. There have always been, and will always be, arguments over missions and whose enhanced genomics are superior. I demand you stop, the woman gasped, and I backed away from the door. No, she can smell me. I understand if this were just a conversation over a cup of tea, with the Heim right next to the door only making me laugh, but I really don't want to get into an argument. Let Oto-san sort this out himself. He's used to it. He's smart, after all. The question I asked myself, "What should I do?" was answered by Hanabi, who conveniently appeared at my side. I smiled at the girl, she blinked, and I led my sister off to talk some more. I'm never opposed to further tightening my relationship with my sister. She already sees me as a person, not like before, which is incredibly pleasant. That evening, my father caught my hand, and I instantly remembered a couple of overheard phrases. The realization that he would be talking about them, or about the entire conversation with the head of the Inuzuka clan, suddenly dawned on me. It didn't surprise me. I gently released my wrist from my father's grip and allowed him to lead me to the dining room, where tea was already waiting. Something sarcastic was on the tip of my tongue about such concern, but I bit back the words and obediently sat down across from Hayashi. Later. I'll be sarcastic with Niji and Ino, not with my father, who's also the clan head. What if he puts the seal on me? That'll be it, my freedom will end. No, I don't think my father is being rash or will take extreme measures because of such a mistake, but the reminder helps me calm down and pull myself together. You've heard the conversation with Inuzuka-san, he said bluntly. I shrugged. Directness isn't a quality Hayashi possesses. Come to think of it, he doesn't have much else besides intelligence and resourcefulness. He's so mired in politics. And that's sad? Losing yourself is the worst thing that can happen to a person. Just a couple of phrases. I didn't deny it. Then I added with a grin. Literally a couple of phrases. Hayashi nodded, accepting the answer, and I took a sip of tea, barely holding back a moan. It's hot. It burned my tongue, Lou. It's almost as bad as stubbed my toe, but fortunately, I'm a shinobi with fast reflexes and am exempt from such grief. We had a conflict over your interactions with the Jinchuriki, he said slowly. I narrowed my eyes and nodded. So that's how it is. The changes have already begun to seep into history, which is good news. On the other hand, why did this Sim interfere? She explained her complaints by saying that if the Kyubi bearer were to interact with anyone from the clan, it should be the Inuzuka clan. They could teach him how to control the beast, she said. What nonsense, was the tone in his voice. I nodded. And really, what nonsense? Bijou and Kekkei Genkai are two different and incompatible things. The reason is so far-fetched. I don't understand why the hell Hayashi didn't just throw some out right away. She threatened to go to the Jonin Council. My father closed his eyes. It won't do any harm to the clan, but it will be unpleasant. But I don't think it will come to that. Sim is hot-tempered, but easygoing, and I made it clear to her that I won't back down. Perhaps her son will try to mend fences with you and your gang. He trailed off, staring off at the wall behind my head. I blew furtively on the tea, took a sip, closed my eyes. Oh, the Hyuga clan knows a thing or two about tea, and said, and my reaction to this should be, well, you didn't call me here for nothing, father. I chuckled slightly. Hayashi, to my surprise, slowly shook his head. You can react however you like, but you must know that my argument was precisely your independence. In fact, that's precisely why I called you. He shrugged, twirled the bowl in his hands, and sipped his tea. But our relationship with the Inuzuka clan will now be strained, no matter what you do. I won't let such a brazen attack go unpunished. My head was spinning. My overly emotional reaction to certain things was expressed in my body, not my spirit. I didn't want to leap from permissiveness and happiness. I even managed to maintain a more or less calm expression on my face. I knew my relationship with my father had become significantly warmer and that he was now proud of me, too, as I was already so close to achieving the 32 heavenly strikes. But to declare that his daughter was now independent enough to make her own decisions, that was worth a lot. I gave Hayashi a hesitant but grateful smile, and he bowed his head slightly in response. I left my father's place feeling happy, even driving a barely acquainted clansman into a nervous tic with my mutterings about happiness, joy, and world peace, without any great screaming. Firstly, my relationship with my father has improved, and now the main thing is to maintain my high standards and not disappoint him. Secondly, it's now clear that he's truly supportive of my plan with Naruto, otherwise he would have backed down under Tsume's pressure and even beaten something out of her for it. I know him. Thirdly, they definitely won't stick me on Kiba's team now. No matter how much the third Hokage favors the clanless, studiously ignoring clans, he won't pit the heirs of two families that dislike each other against each other. Why are you so happy, cousin? Niji asked with carefully concealed interest, but I noticed this wave of strange mood. Smiling, I adjusted my bag and practically skipped toward the academy. Someone from the younger branch even waved, and I waved back. I was surprised Niji wasn't jumping around beside me, because I was bursting with positive feelings. Oh, I'm just a VIP now. I grinned contentedly. Niji looked skeptical and remained silent, not pressing me to continue. I nevertheless briefly recounted the gist of my conversation with my father, and he clicked his tongue in admiration. Whether he was envious, or admiring, or something else, I couldn't quite tell. He didn't press the issue further, and after leading me to the academy, he adjusted his headband. I imagine how hurt he was by wasting his talents on terribly simple D and C rank missions, when his brother had long been a chunin, and I sighed, deflating my good mood a little. I wouldn't even have been angry, I'd have been offended. Sorry, Hinata, but I have more missions today. He suddenly grimaced. Gai-sensei and Lee. I understood everything without words, especially since the wave of emotions was entirely understandable. They were wildly enthusiastic, but I wouldn't want to join their team. Maybe just for one day. Maybe just for one training session. To watch my brother, the one I was rooting for the most, beat both Tenten and Lee. But the fact that he wouldn't be coming to our clearing was sad. I assured him everything was fine and headed to the academy. After classes ended, everyone left so quickly I didn't even have time to blink. After exchanging a vague glance with a sleepy Shikamaru, who merely yawned and spread his arms, I trudged home, somewhat offended. But my emotions were mostly filled with confusion. Where were they all going? If Ino understood, she could have been called away on clan business, to classes. That had happened more than once. But Sasuke and Naruto, especially Naruto. My good mood faded, and I returned to the clan quarters pensive. I nodded to Ko, waved to the kids milling around him. A teacher's day is a teacher's day, and strode off to my room. I wanted to throw my bag on the bed, change into clothes more suitable for training, and go finish off the heavenly attacks that had automatically opened for study after I began to see the faint spots on the shinobi's body from which thin streams of chakra were oozing. But a surprise awaited me in the room. Naruto, Ino, Sasuke, and Niji, accompanied by Hanabi, holding a huge cake. While I was quietly blushing, the boys were already pushing me toward the sumptuous treat, shoving tea into my hands and helping themselves to a slice. I, meanwhile, was so touched and sniffling. I'd managed to forget my own birthday again. Well, that's not surprising. I never really thought about it here. We just didn't celebrate much. But there, my birthday is in the summer. So I always remembered it in the summer, when I should have been preparing to congratulate Naruto and Sasuke, not in the winter. I also figured out why Naruto was so sleepy. It turns out he was struggling with where to get a cake, and finally decided to make it himself. He spent the entire night running around the stores, and then he actually made it. Hearing this, I stared at Naruto in near awe. That's it. I want to marry him. I'll have to work hard to gain weight from training anyway, and cakes are so luxurious and delicious. But I was immediately reassured. Ino asked her cousin for the recipe, passed on all the recommendations to Naruto, and he only managed to make the cakes without burning on the third try. Then I had to wait until the next day to run out for the frosting, but then the rest of the guys joined in, so the work went faster. I imagined them dragging this colossus at a waltz pace to the clan's quarters, when Niji had already agreed on everything, and meeting Hanabi. I brought them tea. My sister explained briefly about her part in this mission. I sniffled, finished the cake, and getting up from the table, hugged Naruto. Never mind the others, he'd been fiddling with the cakes all night. He hadn't slept, and somehow he'd kept it a secret. Chapter 7. Betrayal. We're starting the final exam. You've already passed the theory, now it's time for the practice, throwing kunai and shuriken, and after that, you'll go into a designated room one by one and demonstrate one of the techniques to the examiners. Irika Yumino said. I twitched my fingers, quite nervous. I should have reacted normally, I knew I'd pass. But no, I'm afraid for Naruto. He still hasn't been able to create a single illusion clone. Sasuke churned them out by the hundreds, and I just rolled my eyes. Of course, an Uchiha with a One-Tomo Sharingan can do even more. It didn't take long for us to awaken Sasuke's Sharingan. Niji very kindly showed us the exercises our clan uses to activate the dojutsu for the first time, and miracle of miracles, 2 days later Sasuke came to the academy as pleased as if he just received a free crate of tomatoes. Or 2 crates. And he ate half of them. The Uchiha's love for this red vegetable is legendary. I swallowed. So, Naruto got AC in theory. I tied with Sakura simply because it's impossible to get more than 100 points. Sasuke also got 100. Naruto will throw kunai well, shurikens not so well, but that's okay. Sakura will do all of this with a C+ or B-. I'll do great simply because otherwise I'll be laughed at in the clan, and so will Sasuke. And if Naruto gets clones, he'll fail the exam. The rest are ready for the techniques. So, what are my chances of making it onto Team 7 with Kakashi? The answer is 50%, since Hayashi has completely fallen out with the Inuzuka clan, and Kiba, after a couple of attempts at friendship, almost immediately abandoned him. But Hiruzen is a prankster who loves clanless people. What does he care about the squabbles of mere mortals? Throwing kunai and shuriken, I calmly noted that I'd hit every target. I glared at Sasuke, smirking. It just oozed pathos. He'd probably do something outrageous when he threw his weapons. Oh, I can't. And this guy everyone thought was a slob? He's just bursting with emotion. I had to shut him up before they burst. Hyuga Hinata, Irika-sensei called me, scribbling something in his notebook where, apparently, all the students were listed. I rose from the grass, where I'd been lounging next to a nervous Naruto, and went to the previously announced room. 106, 106, 106. Judging by what I see with the Byakugan, Mizuki is waiting for me. I remember being baffled by how he'd decided to betray me. I realized it when Sensei's emotions changed a week before the exam. They weren't different, and his chakra was exactly the same, blue, but I still felt something was wrong. When Naruto openly stated that Mizuki-sensei had become somehow different, I calmed down completely. Naruto is a good judge of character, and if he says Mizuki has become different, then that's how it is. Hinata, show me the clones, please, Mizuki asked. I narrowed my eyes sweetly and created 5. No one expected more from a genin. I mean, I could have made about 40, but why show off my genjutsu skills, especially when this technique was the simplest? That's why the Uchiha can create them so easily. The teacher glanced at my copies with indifference and nodded. I bowed slightly and left the office. There would be a ceremony in the evening where we would officially be given our forehead protectors. Right now, the Hittite were just for show. An indifferent Sasuke was already heading toward the room, and I used gestures and facial expressions to show him that everything was fine, easy, and that worrying was simply beneath a genius like him. I'm afraid Uchiha didn't understand that last part, but he nodded, apparently getting the gist of it. I left the academy and, whistling, went to look for Ino. Given my Byakugan, I didn't have to look long for her. I only had to form a seal and mutter the necessary words, and her chakra began to glow familiarly on the bench at the academy's exit. A very strange observation, by the way. Chakra, it's almost identical, really, only the elemental components differ, and even those are only visible when a shinobi uses a technique. Otherwise, the chakra looks and feels absolutely identical, but I somehow determine whose it belongs to. I rubbed my temples, measuring the distance roughly as usual, about 1 kilometer of vision, according to the last measurements with Ko, and I don't think anything has changed in 3 days. Yes, that swing over there fits right in, but the slide doesn't. What a shame. What did you get? Ino asked curiously as soon as I landed next to her. I got Kawarimi. There's even a piece of wood in the corner to use as a jumping post, can you believe it? I've been throwing Mizuki clones at him. I chuckled slightly. I've created 5 of them. What kind of show do you think Sasuke will put on? I'm sure he'll be very disappointed if Mizuki doesn't drop his jaw or at least applaud his perfect jutsu. Ino giggled, clearly imagining Sasuke Mizuki clapping. A picture of Sasuke with a bouquet of roses and on stage flashed before my eyes. Bouquets, flowers, hats flying everywhere, cameras clicking. I choked and sucked in a breath to keep from bursting into laughter. Calm down, just calm down. I need to get that image out of my head. I rubbed my temples and tried to ignore the persistent image. It'll pass. I hope. Some time later, Sasuke arrived, arm in arm with Naruto. Well, not exactly arm in arm, of course, or even holding hands, but close. Did you pass or didn't you? I asked impatiently. It was impossible to tell from his thoughtful expression. Naruto blinked, looked at me, and grinned proudly, then plopped down on the bench next to me. I pass, he drawled contentedly. I kept telling Mizuki-sensei that Uzumaki and illusions were like Suna and the land of snow. I think I really pissed him off, that's why he told me to do Kawarimi. And first he wanted to make me do Bunshin no Jutsu. He grimaced, and I blinked slowly. So, Naruto passed the exam and essentially received the headband. So what reason would Mizuki have for trying to persuade Naruto to steal the scroll? And how will he learn shadow clones? I bit my lip and still decided it wasn't worth it. In the anime, Naruto was saved by Iruka, but here Iruka isn't a good guy at all, and his relationship with Naruto is friendly, but tenuous. More like acquaintances. Okay, guys, are we going to leave? I stood up from the bench and stretched. Let's rest before the official part of the exam, otherwise there won't be time later. Has everyone seen Niji with dark circles under his eyes? Everyone nodded, remembering my cousin during the first 2 months, but I decided to keep quiet about how Guy was simply driving him crazy. What if Kakashi starts driving us crazy too, or Asuma his team? If you think about Ino, that is. Let me walk you home, Hinata, Naruto offered cheerfully, and I felt a little embarrassed. Ino made such an expression that even Sasuke raised his eyebrows in interest, looked at Naruto, opened his mouth to say something, and was whisked away by Ino. It seemed Yamanaka realized that the Uchiha might say something either incredibly stupid or something that would make both of us, Naruto and me, embarrassed. Come on, see me out. I smiled and slowly walked toward the neighborhood. Unlike the Uchiha clan, the Hyuga clan lived not too far from the center of the village. On the one hand, it was right. They were a large clan, after all, and it would be very unwise to oppress them. On the other hand, I don't even know what's better, to house the censors in the center of the village or on the outskirts. Naruto and I said goodbye warmly, but as I was closing the door to the quarters behind me, yes, the clan is surrounded by a wall, which doesn't bother the Hyugas, but no one can see us. I tripped over something and let out a loud yelp. Then I kicked some piece of wood. How the hell did that even get here? Muttering something under my breath, I walked to my room with a smile on my lips. Naruto walked me home. I spent half the time before the Hittite ceremony lounging on my bed, blissfully idle. Then I went downstairs, chatted with Hanabi, ran to the kitchen for something to eat, and went to get dressed. It wouldn't be appropriate to show up to a posh celebration in a homemade yukata, but shinobi attire would be fine. I gave up on canon and, after pulling on black pants and a purple t-shirt, was satisfied. On a C-rank mission, I'll wear different colors and a chakra-conducting mesh, just in case. It provides some protection for its wearer and develops the hearth, as it constantly draws chakra. Halfway to the academy, I was caught by an unusually pale Ino and Sasuke. I peered anxiously at the Uchiha's face. He wasn't particularly tanned to begin with, and now. Ino tugged my hand and led me off the road into a small forest. Fortunately, there were plenty of them in Konoha. She thrust the Hittite into my hands. I crumpled the bandage in my hands, confused, not understanding what was happening. We were told that the official presentation of the forehead protectors was cancelled because someone stole the Hokage's scroll. And that someone was Naruto, Sasuke remarked gloomily. I widened my eyes at him, then leaned my hip against the bench nearby. Naruto stole the scroll, but why? It was clear, of course, that Mizuki did it, but why? How did he trick me? And hasn't Naruto gotten smarter? I don't think he would have fallen for such a simple trick. Damn it, so much has changed, it's impossible to predict anything now. I bit my lip. Key points: Naruto, the scroll, Mizuki, Irika. Mizuki somehow makes Naruto steal the scroll. Naruto steals the scroll and goes to some clearing. Naruto teaches shadow clones the first technique he comes across. Possible? Possible. Mizuki comes to kill Naruto. Irika protects Naruto. Naruto is moved by it and protects Irika. Possible? I remembered Yumano's emotions and twitched my Hittite. It's hard to believe, to be honest. Stop, some kind of clearing. Guys, there's no time to explain, let's run to our clearing, I said, turning sharply on the spot. It was a good thing we all already knew how to run like shinobi and not fall off rooftops. While I ran, I thought. So, there was an observer behind me, just one. It's unlikely he'll run off to report Uzumaki's whereabouts to the Hokage, and there's no reason for him to do so. Clans aren't exactly fond of the Hokage, and since your techniques were stolen, it's your fault. What's interesting is that I think other villages have a slightly different attitude toward techniques, but in Konoha, there are Uchiha. They were. Huh! Hinata? Naruto's eyes widened. I jumped to the ground, Sasuke and Ino landing not very dramatically behind me, and I rushed toward Naruto, but stopped halfway. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. I asked calmly, "What are you teaching there, Naruto? And why the hell did you steal that scroll?" Naruto blinked. It's just that Mizuki-sensei said you could be exchanged for a scroll. And that you're with the Cloud Shinobi. There. And while I was waiting for him, I was reading. And his eyes blinked again, and he looked so helpless. He realized he'd been tricked, apparently. Byakugan activation, the standard 5 seconds for my age, wasn't exactly what I'd been used to, but I had to live with it. There was the guard, his expression something impossible to describe in a single word, but perfectly suited to the "Fuck, they're such idiots," uttered in a hopeless voice. Much, much further away, 4 more chakra sources. Mizuki-sensei and a trio of strangers. Somewhere on the edge of perception, other shinobi were running, but only on the edge. And why weren't they coming toward us? I deactivated my eyes and rushed toward Naruto. "Sasuke!" I hissed sharply, but quietly. "Now take this scroll and look at it. The one with the Sharingan. And remember it, understand? We've been tricked, of course, but Mizuki and some other shinobi are about to show up, and my guard might well try to help us take them out or just call for help. It's best to call for help now," I shouted into the void. The leaves rustled. It seemed my message had been understood. And since this opportunity has presented itself, well, look, Sasuke. While Sasuke watched obediently, I could feel Ino's piercing gaze on my shoulder blades. Later, my friend, later. Because right now I'm busy, and it looks like we're in real trouble. 1 Chunin and 3 shinobi of unknown power level versus 4 good genin. My Jonin protector, sent for help, is also lurking somewhere, and Irika might suddenly show up. Naruto crawled up to me and quietly apologized for his stupidity, babbling something about the persuasive Mizuki, the Cloud Shinobi, and a brain that had shut down. I patted him on the head, not quite understanding what he was saying or what I was doing. A kind of apathy washed over me. I'd sked and tried to shake myself awake. It was too early. This day would soon end, and we'd see how it would end. Another activation of the Byakugan and a noise indicated that the unhurried shinobi had arrived, and the observer, who had briefly disappeared from view, perched again on a branch almost above my head. Sasuke almost shoved the scroll into Naruto's hands and rubbed his eyes tiredly. I saw his glistening black eyes. Were they watering, perhaps? From lack of practice and overexertion. Oh, Naruto made some friends? He met my gaze. I crossed my arms. Mizuki shrugged. Whatever, Hyuga girl. The scroll is practically ours already. I pocketed the still-held Hitaiite and silently activated the Byakugan. To hell with cannon, huh? Well, let them feel the power of the Byakugan, which they coveted so much that they decided to openly kidnap my beloved self. I still remember it, but only as if it were a dream, while the decision to kill Hazashi was real. Mizuki was spouting some high-flown nonsense, and I'd been holding the Byakugan for a minute. I can only do 9 without anything happening to my eyes. Nothing happened, and Ino was muttering something, standing behind me. After a few seconds I realized what she was muttering, and I kicked the ground and fallen leaves at Sasuke. He turned, baring his teeth, and I nodded toward Ino. As I see, you're not eager to hand over the scroll, drawled one of the shinobi with a nasty burned scar. Then we'll take it by force. Ninpo, Shitenshin no Jutsu, Ino muttered, shattering the previous speaker's pomp and falling unconscious. One of the Cloud Shinobi froze for a second, then pulled a kunai from his pouch and threw it at his partner. His movements were jagged, irregular. Being in an adult male's body was unusual for Ino. I didn't even look again. That same shinobi with the scar attacked me with a suspicious-looking weapon. Oops, I think they're going to try to cut someone's eyes out now. I managed to dodge the shurikens, but I couldn't avoid a close encounter with the Cloud Shinobi, but I almost laughed. A fight with the Hyuga? He's too overconfident. I ducked under his kunai arm and started performing heavenly slashes. I wouldn't even make it to 32, but I'd definitely ruin his life and nerves. Getting knocked out by a tanketsu when you're not used to it is a very, very unpleasant thing. When the Jonin rolled his eyes and fell, I even pinched my arm, but the situation quickly became clear. A Hyuga stood next to me, another Hyuga held the unconscious Ino, and the last one was finishing off the feebly resisting Cloud Kunoichi, who had already realized everything and finally surrendered. Ino, in the Cloud Shinobi's body, rummaged through her pouches, pulled out all her weapons, and returned to her own body. A kunai immediately struck the guy in the temple with the back of it, and Yamanaka, in my clansman's arms, kicked slightly, demanding to be put down. Sasuke and Naruto sat philosophically under a tree, Naruto clutching the scroll. Well, guys, you've done quite a bit. I recognized a tired Ko in one of the shinobi and looked down. Let's go report. Are we heroes now? Ino asked matter-of-factly. Ko looked at her wearily and simply waved his hand, muttering something that sounded equally like Hokage-sama knows, and I don't know. Naruto's grip on the scroll tightened, and Sasuke craned his neck, curiously examining the equipment of one of the fallen enemies lying on the ground. It was almost night when we went home, satisfied and tired, agreeing to meet the next day. Ino narrowed her eyes suspiciously but yawned, so I couldn't be impressed, and just waved my hand. Finding out how everything had gone had taken a lot of our energy. And the picture that emerged was simply stunning. Mizuki, having secretly brought the Cloud Shinobi into the village, decided to steal the scroll with someone else's help. He'd heard that the legendary Uzumaki had installed wards, including on the village gates, not for show, not for show. And Naruto would have been foolish to even deny their affiliation. So he decided to seduce the boy, and he had a good idea. He brainwashed him with nonsense about them kidnapping the Hyuga princess again, discreetly placed him under a genjutsu, and showed him that I was him. Naruto immediately ran for the scroll, meeting no one along the way, and went to a clearing to wait for Mizuki and his team, who had immediately promised to find him no matter what. And then things took off. Ko accurately expressed the general opinion, eyeing the now former sensei skeptically. Well, it's clear with these guys, what are we going to do with them? And then I simply became proud of my own contribution to changing the world. We all started complaining, insisting that we'd suffered emotional trauma, overexerted ourselves, and still hadn't gotten the headbands properly. So we haggled. In the end, Nara, who'd been interrogating us, groaned something unintelligible, gave us an A-rank mission. We did save the Hokage's scroll. We stopped the Cloud Shinobi, and sent us on our way. We were satisfied. The clan tried to find out something, but I brushed it off even from my father, arguing that fatigue and the suffering associated with it would soon awaken my Sharingan. Hayashi didn't get the popular internet joke and froze, but I managed to slip past him into my room, automatically wash up, undress, and go to bed. The morning also left me no time to think about the clan, as I'd slept late, and we'd agreed to meet early with the guys. But without further ado, I took Niji's arm and headed to Hayashi to report. A huge, truly enormous thank you to my father for not kicking my cousin out, and even letting him hear the rest of the story. I practically inhaled his bewilderment, and the almost tangible question, "How?" and looked him straight in the eye. After 10 minutes of leading questions, he dismissed me with a nod. I briefly explained to my brother that we were going to talk and sort things out, and he, with a strange grin, hopped across the rooftops after me. "Tell me, how did you manage to get yourself into this mess?" he shouted as we walked. I just laughed in response, feeling a tight knot of foreboding in my stomach. Maybe it's because I'm close to the main character of this universe, the one around whom almost everything revolves. We landed in our clearing, and I grumbled that we needed to change our base, since everyone knew this one now. Sasuke shrugged and suggested Niji, and I take a look around to make absolutely sure we were alone. We checked, confirmed, and reassured me. The bad feeling was making me nauseous, and Ino and Sasuke's suspicions only intensified it. Naruto, worst of all, hesitated, and Niji suddenly became serious. I rubbed the bridge of my nose and braced myself for questions. "Or an interrogation? Where from?" was all Ino asked. All my mistakes came flooding back, from reacting too quickly to what happened yesterday, as if that was the way things were supposed to be, to the drastic change in my behavior a few years ago. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and then suddenly let it out. The excuses I'd just made up suddenly seemed silly. And was there any point in making excuses anyway? "So," I finally said, "it all started a couple of years ago, when I woke up in my room, a little different from before. And I didn't recognize my room, because mine had always been completely different." The decision to tell these people the truth came spontaneously. I kept asking Niji to check the surroundings and spoke in a curt, clipped whisper. Surprisingly, there was no guard nearby, and I was glad for that. I didn't need extra ears. Towards the end of my speech, I whispered, keeping my eyes averted. When I finished telling everyone about my own death in that world, there was silence. "So you know the future and the past?" Sasuke spoke slowly first. I pursed my lips and nodded. "And so you can tell it?" "Of course I can," I agreed easily, relaxing a little. It looked like they weren't going to kill me here and now. "But do you really need that knowledge, Sasuke? Believe me, there's a double meaning to everything that concerns you and Naruto. Everything. You were the main characters in that manga." I chuckled. And you, Sasuke, are also a total asshole. Forgive me for telling the truth. Have you changed a lot already? Neji asked curiously, rubbing his eyes tiredly. Ino nodded, as if agreeing with the question. Naruto remained silent. Very. Very. I remembered my icy cousin, icy Sasuke, and idiot Naruto. Very. I remembered all the changes and slowly grabbed my head, staring ahead with wide eyes. Don't believe in the butterfly effect. It seems like I didn't do anything that significant, but look how things turn out. Is that bad? Ino asked diplomatically. It must be shitty, Sasuke said, much less diplomatically. Well, uncertainty, all that stuff. Naruto, who had been silent until then, suddenly drawled, drawing some shapes in the air with his palms. And why did I steal the scroll? Because I failed the exam, I admitted reluctantly. And anyway. By the way, did you learn the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu? Naruto nodded, and I stood up, stretching. Everyone stared at me in confusion. Now guys, let's go get our photos taken for our personal files. Neji can come as a freebie, I explained, giggling softly. The hangover had set in. But a few seconds later, everyone was laughing loudly. Even Sasuke was gulping in huge gulps of air and laughing and laughing. The hangover is a terrible thing. Even the Uchihas can't fight it. Chapter 8. Distribution. Kakashi was running late. I expected nothing less. Sasuke was sitting there, devouring a tomato with the most indifferent expression, while Naruto was furious. Nevertheless, that didn't stop me from slumping happily across my desk, staring dreamily into Sasuke's hair. I had finally become a member of Team 7. I don't know if it was the alignment of the stars, our adventure the day before yesterday, or whether the third had figured out the whole distrust and tension between the Inuzuka and Hyuga clans, but I was happy either way. Just imagine, joining the team with the main characters and Hatake Kakashi. Neji, who had visited us, nearly lost his indifference when he heard Sensei's name. A hero of the Third World War and, what made him even more famous, one of the fourth Hokage's students. The status of an elite jonin and knowledge of thousands of techniques also played a role. And if Neji was making plans to scrape more techniques out of my teacher, I was simply glad. I don't relish the prospect of having to endure all the trials I'll have to endure, but I absolutely don't want to leave the boys alone. That's why I was so eager to join Team 7. And it will be easier for everyone, since I'm much better prepared than Sakura. I still haven't delivered the 32 heavenly swords, although I have a feeling I'm just a little bit away, but Shoti and Jukin, as I can already see for the tanker, are easy. And he'll always be like this, right? Sasuke finished his tomato. Sasuke was ready to ask questions again. I sighed, sat up straight, and nodded. Oh yes. I wonder if he doesn't care about us so much that he's just taking so long, or is he just testing us? Or is he really just unable to come now? Remembering something about Kakashi simply standing in front of the memorial, I added that option to the list. Maybe we should set a trap for him? Naruto sniffled. Sasuke launched into a 2-sentence lecture, the gist of which was that a jonin, especially Hatake Kakashi, wouldn't fall for any genin-related nonsense. Naruto huffed and puffed, but set the trap. And despite his pessimistic speech, the Uchiha was happy to share the fishing line. Was anyone else tired of waiting? I smiled slightly and, holding the kunai in my teeth, tied a small knot. Now it definitely wouldn't work prematurely. And Kakashi got caught. He just stupidly walked into our impromptu trap, which was ridiculously simple and predictable. The door opened, the fishing line taut and snapped, as we'd forgotten to trim it beforehand. The sponge flew into Sensei's forehead protector and, with a dull, despairing poof, released a cloud of chalk and plopped onto the floor. Hatake immediately looked like a ghost, and I carefully hid my amusement behind a cough. Sasuke remained unfazed, and Naruto burst out laughing. How should I put this? Kakashi drawled lazily, shaking the white dust from his mask and hair. Oddly enough, he managed to do it in just a few seconds. What kind of shinobi art is this? Tell it like it is, Sasuke interjected seriously, and I couldn't help but smile. Somewhere nearby, Naruto snorted quietly with laughter. Kakashi narrowed his one visible eye, apparently trying to make himself look menacing. I mentally compared him to Hayashi, who at first not only irritated me but also scared me, and propped my cheek with my hand. Not inspiring. Sasuke, for one, doesn't impress either. He's still sitting there, his hands clasped together. You'd never suspect he'd been devouring his tomato just recently. And Naruto even craned his neck to get a better look at our new sensei. Satisfied he hadn't made the desired impression, Kakashi sighed and finished, first impression. I don't like you. I narrowed my eyes, suppressing the urge to simper. He kept us waiting, he was late, he fell into a stupid trap, and now these pompous phrases about first impressions, clearly intended to humiliate us. It's a good thing I enlightened the boys about this man's exemplary character in general and his attitude towards students in particular. He won't fail us, of course, but he could very well scatter us among different teams. It's unpleasant but true. Sensei waved his hand and turned away, heading off somewhere. Standing up, I slithered after him, the boys following behind, eyeing their teacher dubiously. It seemed his authority in their eyes had been shaken considerably. I, for my part, was wondering, would Kakashi make any attempt to teach us, or would everything be the same as in the Ani manga? I wondered. We reached the roof, and Hataki perched on the railing. The others and I exchanged glances and sat down on the steps opposite, and fell silent, waiting for something to happen. Kakashi was also silent, and he reeked of such mortal boredom that I resisted the urge to cover my ears, squeeze my eyes shut, and hold my nose, but I only resisted because I knew it wouldn't help. I sensed these things a little differently. Okay. Perhaps you should introduce yourself. Having heard absolutely nothing from us, either before or after, he rolled his eyes in pain, rested his hands on the railing, and began explaining as if he were stating the most obvious things. Well, you know, what you like, what you don't like, your dreams, hobbies, and all that. Wow. I'm amazed, we're amazed. I wonder if Minato explained it to him like that, or if Kakashi just improvised it. It's just that after those words spoken in that tone, I don't feel like telling anything. It's as if Sensei had already given up on us. I exchanged a furtive glance with Sasuke and realized I wasn't the only one thinking that way. Naruto pursed his lips and frowned. Kakashi-sensei, let's go first, I purred ingratiatingly. Hataki looked at me lazily, and I just crossed my arms over my chest. Although, what am I talking about? There was no sign of normal breasts here. But considering I'm 12 now. I blinked and focused on Sensei, chiding myself for getting carried away again. Oh, me? My name is Hataki Kakashi. I don't want to tell you what I like and what I don't. Dreams? Well, I have a lot of hobbies. With each phrase he spoke, my face grew colder and colder. I tried not to show my emotions. I really wanted to laugh, watching how, skillfully, he mocked us. No, really, what nonsense. Even Naruto could do better. Naruto, by the way, was looking skeptically at his shoes, smiling nervously. Did he also appreciate the brainwashing? And Sasuke? Sasuke was looking off into the distance. He was so emotional, he didn't even know whether to laugh or cry. I can just imagine his thoughts. So this is going to be our mentor? I warned you. Of course, Sasuke didn't believe me. This is Hataki Kakashi, one of the best jonin in the village. And he even has a Sharingan, which, although terribly suspicious, makes you think. And look how things turned out. Let the girl start, Kakashi's forehead protector corrected. I shrugged indifferently. Well, I'll go first, no problem. Hyuga Hinata. I love my friends, kind people, and peace. I dislike hasty judgments, great villains, and stereotypes. I don't really have a hobby, but I enjoy training and being lazy. I hesitated. I have 2 dreams. To break the subjugation seal on the younger branch and raise a glass to the Kage of Konoha, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto looked embarrassed, Sasuke snorted dismissively, and I smiled softly. Someday, I'm sure, it will be like that. After all, dreams are meant to come true, right? And someday Naruto will stop being embarrassed every time he's openly praised. Everything will be okay someday. Just one question: where and when? My name is Uchiha Sasuke, he began, without waiting for the teacher to prompt him. There are so many things I dislike, it's pointless to list them. I like tomatoes, silence, and I respect a few people. My dreams are to revive the clan and kill one person. I don't really have any hobbies. I pursed my lips. I felt sorry for Itachi, but I felt even more sorry for my friendship with Sasuke, so I didn't bring up the subject of the decimated clan. He wouldn't believe it now. I needed something that would finally convince him that I was acting only in their favor, that I truly knew everything. And how to do that, I had no idea yet. And now for the third. Kakashi smiled, giving me a long look. He flashed a fleeting interest, and then boredom washed over me again. I massaged my temples, feeling the strain of being near him for so long, and tried to hold on to Naruto and Sasuke. An even calm emanated from the Uchiha, somewhat clouded by something. Having trained and dabbled with this ability to my heart's content, I could only assume it was some kind of internal doubt. But what kind? Naruto's emotions, however, were pure and vibrant, and I breathed a sigh of relief, clinging to impatience, excitement, and joy. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, the guy began kindly, and I couldn't help but smile slightly as he flashed one of his brightest smiles. Beautiful. I love ramen at Ichiraku and my friends. I don't like bores, those who whine about their hard lives, or just plain bad people. My hobbies, well, I guess spending time with Sasuke, Hinata, Ino, and Neji. And my dream is to surpass all the Hokage. And then I'll show everyone what I'm really like. Naruto blushed slightly at the end of his fiery speech, and I could tell he was embarrassed. What was he doing? Oh yeah, my dream is also about him becoming Hokage. I smiled slightly and looked at Kakashi, shifting my position slightly and leaning on my hands, which I had placed behind my back. I was getting tired of sitting in one place, and peace refused to come with a stranger. Okay, Kakashi said seriously. I narrowed my eyes, Sasuke stiffened, and Naruto raised his eyebrows in interest, his embarrassment already gone. Tomorrow we'll begin our missions, Hitaki said, looking at the three of us carefully. We all remained indifferent, only Naruto sighed sadly, wincing. We all knew what D-rank missions were. Neji had somehow lost his temper and described everything in vivid detail. About the truly idiotic missions, about the crazy guy, about the crazy Lee, and about the only bastion of normality, Tenten. But first, the four of us are going to do something. I was itching to ask. Oh, by any chance, not the one in Jiraiya-san's book? But I kept quiet. It was impossible to describe the effort it took me, but Kakashi still gave me a suspicious glance. I forced a forced smile, not even trying to give it any real emotion. Sensei was a new, suspicious person, and my complete unfamiliarity with him was a bit unnerving. Even Iruka, though a bit of a wild card, was more familiar. Survival training, that's what it will be. I noticed Sasuke's expression momentarily shift to something that seemed to say, Yes, keep lingering, I'm very interested. Reading the same sentiment in his expression, I couldn't help but chuckle. Hitaki gave me a piercing look, but I didn't react. Boredom still swirled around him, but I held on tightly to Naruto. I'll be your opponent. But this won't be just training, hehehe. What's so funny, Kakashi-sensei? Sasuke asked boredly, completely fed up with his procrastinating teacher. An Uchiha who disliked tardiness and delays, and who was even more open than he'd let on. I don't envy the teacher. Kakashi, after laughing a little more and making Naruto squirm with curiosity, Sasuke's face became like a stone mask from another extra minute of waiting, finally answered. Out of the 27 graduates, only 9 will become genin. The rest will return to the academy. This training is actually a very difficult test with an attrition rate of over 66%. Kakashi's tone suddenly changed from bored to ominous, and he froze mockingly. awaiting a reaction. Glancing furtively at Sasuke's angrily narrowed eyes and Naruto's wide-eyed grin, I realized I was the only one who noticed the mockery. Sometimes this ability only gets in the way. Like now, for example, preventing me from reacting correctly. How do I know where my feelings end and what everyone else has begins? And I realized long ago that others can't feel emotions, otherwise many situations wouldn't have happened, and I often encountered misunderstandings from Niji, for example. If that were true, my cousin would have told me, I said quietly but firmly. He didn't say anything like that. You're just scaring us, Kakashi-sensei. Sensei said nothing, simply narrowed his eyes and studied me for a moment. Boredom swirled around him, and for some reason it seemed to me that its concentration had diminished, though being near him still felt uneasy. It seemed the death of the entire team had left a much deeper wound than I thought. In any case, he began slowly, tearing his gaze away from me. I advise you not to eat anything. Come to training ground number 12 at 6. And don't be late. I felt an unprecedented sense of lightness when Kakashi, showing off, disappeared into Shunshin's pile. It was as if I'd taken off the weights they'd once given us at the academy. Taking a deep breath, I stood up from the step, dusted off my pants, and glanced casually at the boys. This was all very well, of course, but I really should tell everyone about my supposed future and equally unclear past. Just so they wouldn't have to depend on me. Sasuke, do you still have the meeting room in your clan? I asked thoughtlessly and quietly. Sasuke turned to me abruptly and nodded slowly, and I smiled absently, explaining my request. Well, we were very lucky they didn't notice us yesterday. Why didn't you notice, Hinata? Maybe someone heard? Naruto glanced at me with interest. Sasuke gave a short, hollow laugh. It seemed the idea of letting us into his territory had caught him off guard, but he wasn't against it, otherwise he would have simply refused. And I could see he wasn't even particularly hesitant, though anger was thrumming somewhere in the back of his mind. I briefly touched my temple, where a sharp pain had pricked it, and answered patiently. If they had noticed, Naruto, I wouldn't even be here. I'd be in the interrogation department right now, either being tortured or having my brains screwed around by someone from the Yamanaka clan, I said quietly. Naruto paled slightly and looked helplessly at Sasuke. He snorted angrily, shrugged his shoulders, vaguely resembling a sullen raven, and didn't refute my words. We both knew we'd neglected caution, they because they weren't aware such a secret would be revealed, and I because of nervousness. And we knew we wouldn't be so lucky a second time. The meeting room was called differently in each clan, or maybe not in every clan, because they all had one and their purpose was the same, to keep secrets. I don't know how, but the walls, floors, and ceilings of these rooms simply blocked everything and were a blind spot for any censors. Eavesdropping the old-fashioned way, meaning without any chakra, was also impossible. I suspect that at some point the clans pooled their resources and commissioned seals from the Uzumaki, or perhaps they didn't pool their resources and did everything in secret. As far as I know, tea is required according to etiquette, but looking at my friends' tense faces, I realized that everyone had simply ignored etiquette. And rightly so, there was no need for it. I remembered my activities, which now bothered me less often, and shrugged. No need to worry so much, I exhaled. I just wanted to tell you everything. It's not urgent. It's just something. Otherwise, it's somehow. Too much knowledge, too much sorrow. Niji muttered, his brow furrowed. Ino suddenly nodded, supporting him, and Sasuke moved his head incomprehensibly. Naruto grew quiet, and doubt, determination, tension, and helplessness swirled and swirled around him. I felt my breathing become labored. I didn't like negative emotions, and feeling them from Naruto, who was throwing everything bright and concentrated, was unusual and terrifying. What do you mean, not tell them? I asked, my voice tight. I can do a lot, warn them, tell them, explain, save them from mistakes, I muttered, looking at my friends with a puzzled expression. Then I sighed and waved my hand, as if to say, as you wish. Then let me at least tell you about Kakashi, so we know what we're up against. in more detail than before, I clarified. The story took barely 5 minutes, and answering Sasuke's question about how Kakashi got the Sharingan took another 2. All this time, I was trying to catch up with Ino, Neji, Sasuke, and I couldn't, because I seemed to be too focused on Naruto, who was clearly going through some rough times. And then, when I finished, he suddenly spoke quickly. The day before yesterday, when we still saw the scroll, well, Mizuki attacked me then. He told me that. Naruto sighed. The Kyuubi no Yoko was sealed within me, and that it was I who almost destroyed the village back then. There was a brief silence after his rapid speech, and I was overcome with the hopeless, dreary anticipation that was now swirling around Naruto. Ooh, how awful. I was holding on only by sheer willpower, even though I wanted to do anything to make Naruto stop, to become himself again. Naruto, don't worry so much, I finally said softly, regaining my composure and making sure my voice wouldn't fail me. I knew, but as you can see, I've been talking to you from the very beginning. Think about the illogicality of his words, and you'll understand everything yourself. I chuckled. They sealed a fox inside him, but Naruto, it turns out, is a fox himself, who was kind of destructive before he was sealed inside Naruto. Sasuke said sourly, dramatically putting his hand to his face. You'd have to be as much of an idiot as you are to believe that, Naruto. Naruto let out an indignant yell and huffed, and I was blissing out, basking in the relief and puppy-like joy that instantly overtook Naruto. Ino slapped the boy's hands loudly, and Neji, who had been about to help Naruto beat Sasuke, sat back down, glaring at the Uchiha. Naruto was practically beaming. Of course, everyone was okay with it. Their attitude toward him hadn't changed. Beautiful. Actually, I don't have to tell you about the future, but I can shed light on some of the dark spots in your stories. I tried to offer again, but, noticing Ino's wrinkled nose, I exploded. Do you know how hard it is to know all this, to keep it in mind, and to be afraid that something will go wrong because of me? And to be constantly afraid, because our lives hung by a thread so many times, and for some, it was cut short. I whispered toward the end. I believe that even without telling us anything, you can change everything. Neji said unexpectedly softly. I swallowed. As if he knew what was going on with him. With our help, of course. And anyway, what if your words anger the kami? I sighed, smiled weakly, and nodded, feeling that Neji truly believed in me. Naruto's faith was clearly visible through it, making me take a few deep breaths and pull myself together. I didn't want to disappoint him, and anyway, they believe in me, and here I am, falling apart. This isn't right. Okay, Sasuke, Naruto, come to the training grounds tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Eat, grab your weapons, and get ready for a good fight with the Jonin. Oh yeah, be prepared for our teacher to read Jiraiya's perverted novels during the fight. I don't know how he keeps his cool. I laughed, looking at the boys' long faces, and stood up, smiling. Oh well. I could handle the silence, I definitely could. It wasn't for nothing that I was chosen. Glancing at my blushing teammates, Ino giggling softly, and Neji massaging his temples, I doubled over with laughter again. No, really, how? My cousin suddenly asked thoughtfully, and everyone started laughing, both the blushing Naruto and Sasuke, with the bright pink spots on his cheeks and neck. As soon as everyone quieted down, Uzumaki shyly suggested asking, and Sasuke, who had decided to go outside to catch his breath, tripped and almost fell face first onto the floor. I didn't want to burst into tears of laughter, so I hissed sternly at everyone and, standing up, grabbed my cousin's hand and ran off shamefully.